All right, I'm Rick McKinney. I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to get us started with the preamble here. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organizations, or institutions. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I'm going to let my friend Angela read the steps.
Hey everybody, I'm Angela. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. And these are the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thanks for letting me read.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Travis. I'm an alcoholic from Wilmington, and I have got the 12 traditions. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Thanks for letting me read.
All right. I'm Rick. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Angela and Travis. That's right. That's right. Y'all ready to have some fun tonight? Yeah. Has anybody here ever been Myrtle Beach drunk? No? Is anybody Myrtle Beach drunk right now? We're not trying to embarrass you, just want to get to know you. Look, y'all are in for a treat, man. This guy sitting right here is my favorite AA speaker. This dude is hilarious. he's got all kinds of good stuff, but man, the thing that impresses me the most about this guy is his service work. This man talks the talk, but he walks the walk. The first little bit of sobriety, getting a big old hug from Michael McCollum was one of my favorite things. And it kept me coming back. They say attraction rather than promotion. This guy's attraction all the way. I want to hear y'all laugh and get loud. Help me recognize my buddy Michael McCollum.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael McCollum, and I'm an alcoholic. My heart is just overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. There are so many people in this room that I love dearly, so much. I've been coming to this conference for 11 straight years. Jimmy Brown got me to come. I would have come in 2010, but I had a court date, September 18th, and I didn't know if I was going to be in jail or not, so I didn't want to lose my deposit on the room. But I wanted to come because I knew everybody was going, but I didn't have to go to jail. It was nice to go to court, but I didn't have to go to jail that time. But man, it's just so. When I walked in this room this afternoon, I felt good right down here, and I felt 10 times better. And I'm so juiced up. I'm as extroverted as they come, and when I get around you people, I get fired up, and I'm never better than when I'm around you. When I'm with other alcoholics, I'm the best version of myself. Y'all bring the best out of me. Y'all encourage me. Y'all push me. Y'all make me want to be a better version of myself because I want to be like you. By the example you set for me, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. If I lived a million years, I could never repay this program of Alcoholics Anonymous for what it has given me. But hopefully God will give me plenty of time and plenty of opportunities to be of service and be helpful to others and help spread this message of Alcoholics Anonymous, how it saved my life and how it saved countless others. John, I thank you and Corinne and Betsy for all the hard work you do and everybody that's involved for putting this to so much work. And as our friend Randy would say, thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in my own recovery. Thank you. What a gift. What a gift. There's so many people I'd love to name that helped me get to where I am. I don't have the time. But that's what I found in Alcoholics Anonymous when I came in here and I couldn't ask for help. Y'all helped me when I felt like I didn't deserve help. Y'all picked me up when I didn't know where to go, and you showed me how to live when I didn't know how to live. I didn't have a life worth living. I didn't care if I lived or died, and my life is so full and so rich now with all these wonderful relationships that I have with friends and families, sponsees. It's just, I can't say enough good things. But so normally we start at 8, so I can go till 9:15, right? Everybody got to know where to go, right? But I guess I'll get started. I have a sobriety date. It's October 29th, 2009. I know some of y'all are looking at your wife saying, I got socks older than that. And I said, well, hang your socks on the wall, see what kind of story they tell you. But anyway, just don't you worry. I just say that so you can go ahead and lower your expectations. This won't be much more than a beginner's talk. I promise you we will not graduate from spiritual kindergarten tonight. We will not be enlightened. This will not be the Sermon on the Mount, but we might have a good time. And we might laugh a little together. We might even cry together. I don't know. We'll see how the Spirit moves us. But I have a home group. It's the early bird group of Alcoholics Anonymous. We meet every day at 8 a.m. And we have a offshoot, the AA Zoomaholic Zoom meeting. We meet and people, rag on. Well, I don't want to talk about outside issues, but the computer meetings. They've saved a lot of people's lives. It's saved mine. And I met 2 people here tonight. One of my friends came from New Jersey. We convinced her Monday she was scared not to come, and we were all like, you need to come. And when I checked in, there she was checking in. And I got to give her a big hug. Every time, though, when I meet somebody that only see me on the computer, you're a lot taller. And I was like, yeah, I'm only this big. Ain't but this big on the computer. Everybody's 1x2. I'm 5x6. But anyway, I've got a sponsor, and he has a sponsor, and I've got sponsees. I've got a couple of sponsees that are here with me. I got to ride down with one. I sponsored Travis for 4. He's got a little over 5 years now. But he did what's supposed to do. He graduated on. He moved away. He got to go to a nice job, but we still stay in contact, and I love him. And God has put so many people in my life at exactly the right time I needed them. I got one sponsor. I don't know if he's made it here yet. David was supposed to be sneaking in. He picked up 8 years. Oh, did he make it? Well, somebody's barking back there. But anyhow, is there a dog in the house? Oh, man. But sponsorship and sponsees, that's the greatest gift. That is the greatest gift of this program. Sitting down with another man, looking eye to eye, just the two of us, talking about the things that separate us from God and our fellow man. Seeing the light come on when there was no light, there was no hope, and then to see them grow, and they push me. When I'm working with another man and helping them, it helps me tremendously. Because the desire, the willingness that I see in these men to want to be a better version of themselves, it inspires me to want to do better. They push me to do better. When I go through the steps with another man, it forces me to go back through and look at all the dark crannies where I didn't want to look. And see the things that I didn't want to see about myself, because I can only look at myself from my point of view. I need your help. I need your help. I've lived in Greensboro the last 10 years. I'm from a little town called Reedsville. And woohoo, that's right. Some of y'all know where it's at. And it's only about 15,000 people, but it's a nice little place to be from. I've got two wonderful parents, and I've spoke to my mother today. She told me to be careful, and I said, you be careful too. And mama can't stop being mama. They gonna act like mama till Exactly. Amen to that. And but the one thing I can tell you about my parents is they did absolutely nothing to deserve the things that I put them through. They're salt of the earth type people. They taught me right from wrong. They raised me right and tried to give me good moral standards. We grew up going to church. My dad, taught Sunday school. They're hard working. They just celebrated 52 years of continuous marriage back in May. I've never heard my father raise his voice to my mother. I've only seen him get upset once, and obviously it was over something I had done. But anyway, growing up, we had a great life. I don't have anything bad to say about my childhood. We lived in a nice house, but it wasn't nice enough. We had decent cars, but a couple blocks over, the kids had bigger houses. They had bigger cars, and I don't know where I got it. Like outside looking in, everything looked perfectly fine, and I was popular. I could get along with anybody because I was a chameleon. I could be whatever I thought you wanted me to be. Because for the longest time, who I was based on what I thought you thought of me. I tried to be the class clown. I tried to be a jock. I tried to be, the country boy or whatever. I tried to be a city slick, and tried to wear all these different hats. But then the biggest fear I had was, how do I act when these different groups of people get together? Because I was just a fake and a phony to gain this approval. I don't know where that need came. I desperately needed that peer approval. And you know what I've found here in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous? I've found that perfect love and perfect acceptance for being the most honest, truest version of myself. The more open and honest and vulnerable I am, the more I talk about my insecurities and my fears and my self-doubt, the more you embrace me and you say, thank you, Michael. I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly where you are. I've felt the same way. I've done the same thing. And where else can you get that? Where else in the world can you get that acceptance that we have? We take everybody in. And we love them. Because y'all accepted me in when I didn't feel welcomed anywhere. And as far as drinking goes, I was a late bloomer. People get up here and be like, I was drinking whiskey in my baby bottle, and my uncles made moonshine, and I knew by the time I was 3, I knew where to get to. I thought, what do you mean? It wasn't. I remember my parents had like a New Year's Eve party in like 1980 or something. That same bottle of tequila, we moved it 7 years later. We moved. It was a little bottle of El Toro. It had a little sombrero on the top of it. It was in the bottom of the closet. I don't know why I looked at it every time I went in there. It called to me, but I never touched it. But I was 16 when I had my first drink. It was June 6, 1991. Somebody thought it was a good idea for me to go to the beach with my neighbor's son had graduated from college. So they sent me down to Ocean Isle. These guys are, 21, 22, 23 years old, and they were doing what those guys do. They made it look pretty fun. So we was having some pizza, and they had some natural light, and I knew that natural light was the beer with the taste for food. So I cracked me one, and I took a pull off of it, and I thought I was going to cut them out my eyes, my ears, my nose. I was like, this, something's not right with this, And they said they had some Stoli's vodka in the freezer, and they pulled it out and some Sundrop, and I got an iced tea glass, and I fixed about 3 tall ones and drank about 3/4 of the fifth. They were like, hold up, we only got one of those. Save some for later. So I know now they was just having fun with the chubby kid, and one of them went to the store and came back with a bottle of Cisco, which So I don't know. Yeah, y'all remember that stuff? They liquid crack. I don't know if they still sell it, but the jungle juice, it'd get you right, And I remember starting to drink it, but I don't remember finishing it. I blacked out. So the first time I drank alcoholically. But when I was drinking, I could be all things to all people. I was like, man, y'all been holding out on me my whole life. I was like, I've been missing out on this. I was like, if the people of Reedsville could only see me now. I was down here at the beach, Livin, living it up, man. I was riding around on a golf cart, girls in bikinis, talking junk and stuff. And then so I come to the next day, and I couldn't wait to do it again. And so I grew 4 inches taller. I had muscles. My hair turned blonde and wavy. Everything I said was funny and cute. And then later it was pointed out to me that a lot of the stuff I said was just, rude and obnoxious. And I didn't really care, who I offended with what. But I thought it was everything I said. I thought was hilarious. I was like, well, they'll get over it, And so anyway, I didn't have many repercussions for me because I focused on academics. Came very easy. I was a straight A student without any effort, and I was captain on the football team. The combination of the two afforded me the luxury. I was offered the opportunity to walk on the football team in Raleigh at North Carolina State University. So in August of 1993, I reported for duty. And 3 days later, I took the opportunity to walk off because them guys was big, and they took themselves a little too serious. It was like they handed me an itinerary and they said what I was going to do from 5:45 a.m. till 9:15 p.m. And it was wake up, run. They lost me right there. I was like, wake up and run. And the breakfast was like fourth on the list. I was like, who do I talk to about this? These people, they don't know how to make a charter, so I can help them maybe. So I excused myself, and like I said, here I am down in Raleigh, which is a big town, and there's 30,000 undergraduate students at NC State. When I reported, there's only 15,000 people in my whole town. So I'm country come to town. I never known how to act. I still don't most of the time. I fake it pretty good. But I had a little money in the bank, and I'd go out 3 or 4 nights a week. I'd get blacked out drunk. And any of y'all ever get to report the next day? You'd been out drinking, you'd be like, Michael, you saw Susie, and you didn't really need to. I said, I didn't see her. And they're like, well, you saw Bobby. And I said, I didn't see them. And I'd see them, and oh, yeah, I had been highly offensive. And I would do and say things that I was unimaginable. Sober, I'd be walking across campus, and they'd be like, Michael. I'm like, who is this guy? And they'd come up, and they'd tell me my life story. I was like, I'm going to just spend hours in a room with this person telling them everything I know, which I was surprised it took hours for me to tell them everything I knew. And so anyway, I joined a fraternity, and it was a wild partying fraternity, and luckily I came along before everybody had cell phones in their pocket, because I'd have been a YouTube sensation. They'd have loved to get a load of me. I was captain of Starship Stupid. I was like, you got a bad idea, you just give it to me, wait a few minutes, I'll make that idea badder, worser, better, just depending on your point of view. If you want to throw a commode off the roof or set something on fire or get some pool balls and shoot them across the quad with a 3-man slingshot, I was your man. I like, breaking into the other fraternity houses, stealing food, and then I'd be having a cookout on our back deck. And I'd be like, oh, that's terrible. Somebody want a burger, So anyway, and now, I'm not going to lie. I had a little fun drinking. But inevitably, at some point in the night, I would cross that invisible line that was very visible to everyone else around me, and I'd get violently antisocial. And I know what I was doing now. I knew then I was overcompensating for other areas in my life where I was lacking. I.e., if I'm not getting attention from a young lady, I'm going to beat up somebody half my size to prove what a man I am. And I hurt a lot of guys. I got very violent. I put some people in the hospital. I'm not proud of this, and I don't think I'm some tough guy who can fight. It was the only way I knew to cope. I didn't have these skills that other people seem to have in life. And I finally did something I'm sorry I wouldn't make up for. I was already on double secret probation. I'd gotten in trouble a couple of times, and so I was trying to lay low, and I'd hid out for the whole spring semester my junior year. I turned 21. I didn't go to the bars or anything because I was on thin ice. And the graduating seniors wanted to go out and do the Hillsborough Hike, which is about 25 bars. You go to each one, have a drink. So if you're bad at math, that's 25 drinks. So I was like, well, before we go, I better have a 6-pack and a couple of bong hits because, I'd hate to come up short of the mark, and then you got to pay for all them drinks too. And so after about 20 or so bars, I am, surprise, blacked out. I get kicked out of a couple bars. Me and my buddy try to steal a Jeep. I don't remember anything about that. And I come to in the back of a squad car. handcuffed, different clothes on. I was like, well, what? This is different. I was like, what's going on? I'm restrained. And somebody, matching my description, had been up to no good. And they went into another fraternity house and set a couch on fire and had some tables like this with tablecloths on them, set it on fire, and then threw the lawnmower off the deck to boot when they left and made a ruckus. And now, to this day, I have no recollection. I cannot say whether I did or didn't do that. But the police had this thing. Police had this thing called evidence. And this evidence did not look too good for me, I'll tell you what. And, so, anyway, it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. Nobody got hurt. A couple guys came down, put it out with some fire extinguishers, but it was like 1:15, 30 in the morning, whatever. And a couple guys could have been asleep. Somebody could have really got hurt. Well, the very next weekend, this is Mother's Day, 1996, just down the road at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, a fraternity house burned down. And 6 young people lost their life. And it became a very serious matter. That Monday morning, first thing, I got a call from the Wake County Sheriff's Department that said a warrant had been issued for my arrest. I'd been charged with first-degree arson and attempted murder. And I was looking at 10 years. It really took the wind out of my sails. It cut my legs out from under me. My father had to drive me back down to Raleigh to be arrested. And the guy was like, he let my dad get back in the car if he put the handcuffs on me so my dad didn't have to see it. And we did what we knew to do. We had a local senator in town. We talked that stayed in Raleigh, and he got us a way too expensive attorney. And they sent me. They said we need to go get an alcohol assessment. I passed that, no problem. And I was lying to that woman. You can't go in there and tell them people how many you drink. They got this little chart. They got a little chart, and they're like, if you have more than 6 drinks a week, you're an alcoholic. And I was like, if you only have 6 drinks a week, you got a big problem. You ain't got enough to drink. 6 drinks a week, the problem. Yeah, that's your problem. You ain't got enough to drink. Telling me. It's like the same person must have done that height body mass index chart. They don't know what they're talking about either. Bunch of idiots. They don't know. Get out of here with that. I'm supposed to be 7'9". Where would you get pants? 7'9". Silly people. Stretchy waistband. I'm fine. But anyway, so I'm at my parents' house, and next week, and a little letter comes in the mail, and it's from that council, the alcohol assessment. It came in the mail. My dad, I didn't know what it was. My dad opened it in front of me, read it, and then he handed it to me. And it said, Michael had experimented with drugs, and he drinks alcoholically. And I was like, oh my God! I was like, what is my dad going to do? Like, he just read, this paper says I'm an alcoholic, and he took the paper from me, and he balled it up and threw it away. He said, they don't know what they're talking about. He said, we're going to get another assessment. I was like, that's right. That is right. They don't know what they're talking about. 21-year-old Mike, I was like, I'm too smart. I'm too smart to allow that to happen to me. Somebody that lives in a neighborhood like ours and comes up going to church and goes to... People like that don't become alcoholic. I didn't know I drank alcoholically. I wasn't exposed to alcoholism growing up. I just thought, I've indulged or I drank heavily, binge drinking, as they call it, in college. And I thought it was a decision. I thought it was a choice, a matter of choice. Somehow I could control it. I know just as I stand before you today, I have no more control over me being alcoholic than I do if the sun is going to come up today, tomorrow, the next day. My body processes alcohol alcoholically, like roughly 10 to 15% of the world's population. So if you do the math, that's over 700 million people, upwards of a billion people. When I drink, I find it difficult, if not impossible, to predict or control the amount I want to drink. And when I drink, I find it difficult, if not impossible, to predict or control my behavior. It's just like if the son, you're allergic to strawberries. You eat strawberries, you're going to break out. When I drink alcohol, I break out and stupid. 100%. 100%. Happens every time. Just IQ drops. Makes a dent in the ground. And but thanks to you, thanks to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, a relationship with a loving God, and sponsorship, and people just like you in this room, I no longer suffer from the disease of alcoholism. Before I met you, I suffered greatly, and the ones who suffered the most were the ones who loved me the most. So I'm just as alcoholic today as the day I was born. I'll be just as alcoholic the day I die, but I don't suffer from alcoholism anymore. So I tried to get my act together. I got back involved with the church. I was going to community college. I went and got my real estate license. I got to work with my mother. Things started going pretty good. And then I bought a house and started making money. I was making pretty good money during the day selling houses, and even better money at night selling dry goods. And so things. I was like, yeah, I got it together. And then I witnessed April 28th, 1998, I witnessed one of my friends kill another one of our friends in a drinking and driving accident, leaving the wedding. That wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for me. I just kept drinking. I got my own DUI a couple years, the next year. I had more alcohol count. I had to go get more counseling, court ordered, and but I couldn't see it. I remember turning my back on God, standing in my living room when I was 24 years old. I was like, this God they taught me, he's not doing his job like they said he should. And I'm just going to live, how am I going to get the things, this isn't working out. And I remember the moment I turned on it. And I remember they said, well, Michael, they say you got a problem with alcohol. And I was like, well, that's all right. I can fix my alcohol problem with pills, powders, and plants. But I just never found the exact right combination. I will give you a word of advice, so you don't have to waste any time on research and development. Mixing white bars Xanaxes with brown liquor equals losing friends. Don't nobody like that guy. That guy is an a-hole, I tell you what. Or they told me, that's what. So anyway, after that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stick around the house. Stick around the house, can't nothing bad happen. Nobody gets hurt around the house. Oh, about chopped my finger off one night, just splitting some wood. And then I had an accident in the bathroom one night. It was the middle of the night at 2 or 3 o'clock, and I go in there, and it was an old house built in the 50s. It's just a pedestal sink, a commode, cast iron tub, and I'm straight back, right into the cast iron tub. Boom, out like a light. And I come to, folded up like an old rusty beach chair or something. And I'm all of me's in there the short way. And my knees are in my chest. I'm looking up at the ceiling. My head is concussed. And now it takes me a minute. I have to come to it. I'm like, where? And I can't move. I'm just still. I'm like, and I'm looking around. I'm like, what happened? I was like, Mike, you done fell in the bathtub and broke your neck. And I was like, oh man, that's exactly what I fell in the bathtub. My neck's broke. I'm not even gonna be able to get up. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just sitting there, knees in my chest, head. And I was like, what are you gonna do? I was like, you gonna sit here? I didn't know what. I was like, you got to try to get up. I was like, all right, let's try to get up. I don't know who I was talking to, but I was like, let's do it. Let's try to get up. So on the count of 3, we're gonna get up. So I was like, 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, oh. I was like, I might make it. And then I got up, and I was like, oh, I'm good. I was like, how's the neck? So I get in front of the mirror, and I'm like, oh, neck is good. Neck is good, man. My neck, there's nothing wrong. I'm driving for a month. I need to change lanes. I'm like, and I don't know if it got knocked loose that night, but shortly after that, I had this filling in one of my top teeth. I got a crown on it now, but I'd lost it a couple times before. And I was over at my buddy's house. We was passing around this cigar that didn't have any tobacco in it. And it got to be my turn, and I was like, and I was like, and they're like, you're right. And they're like, are you all right? You're right. And I was like, and my throat hurt so bad. I coughed so hard. I was like, Michael, you have torn your windpipe. You've coughed so hard. But I'm tough. My buddy's like, you're right. I was like, yeah, man, I'm good. I'm tough. That's all right. Don't worry about it. I'm all right, man. I'm all right. So it came back to me, and they're like, oh, it's your turn. I'm like, it's good. And I smoked cigarettes back in, so for like about 2 months, I'd smoke a cigarette, and I'd be like, and my friends all knew about it. They'd be like, is your bubble acting up? That's what we called it. I'd be like, yeah, man, my bubble's acting up a little bit. But so it was like that for about 2 months. Well, that night it happened, I couldn't tell anybody anything had happened. So I get home, and I'm like, Michael, your windpipe's tore open. Like, all your air, like if you go to sleep tonight, all your air is going to leak out inside under your skin, and you're going to blow up like a balloon. So, you know how you get, I'm looking in the bathroom mirror, I'm looking at myself, and I was like, oh man, I'm full of air.
I'm full of air.
I was just fat. I looked like a balloon. It wasn't any different. I wasn't filled up with air. I was filled up with cheeseburgers. So anyway, some time passes. About 2 months later, 2 months I'm living with the bubble. And I'm at home by myself, and I take a deep breath. I'm like, and it's like, I was like, what in the heck is that? So I take another couple deep breaths, and it feels like a moth or something is fluttering around inside my chest. I was like, the heck is that? So tink, my filling had sucked out of my tooth and down my windpipe into my lung. It had been floating around for like 2 months. I pulled it out, it looked like half a chewed kernel of metal popcorn or something. And I was like, God, that's great. That is great. I was like, now I know what was in my, it was just my filling was in my lung. I didn't tear my windpipe. I just inhaled my filling. So I can't tell you how relieved I was to find out that's what it was. So anyway, I found a way you could drink for a couple days without stopping and not blacking out. So I showed up at my mother's house 2006 for Christmas Eve. Been away for about 8 or 9 days. I didn't think anybody'd notice. I took a shower, put on a clean shirt, and I had this nice handlebar mustache that went straight into sideburns, looked like a professional wrestler. And I come walking in, I'm like, Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, everybody! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! And they're like, you all right? I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm good, man. Ho, 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 and pulled a knife on my little 9-year-old cousin, Pal. My brother-in-law brings it up every year. Remember, Mike pulled a knife on Pal? I said, we remember, Brian. Shut up. Quit bringing it up. Pal's over at Wake Forest, full academic scholarship, getting an MBA. You'll be able to borrow money from that kid one day. He's fine. He's doing good. And he actually came to me because his dad's one of us. And he remembered that, and he felt comfortable enough coming and talking to me about it. And I was able to help his dad a little bit and talk to him and his sister and tell him about, Alateen and help set him up with that. And I asked him when he was in college, he was doing so well, and I was like, man, we're really proud of you. We're doing good. And I said, are you partying? He said, oh, no. I said, oh, no, Michael. He said, I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let you down. Gifts to this program. But anyway, so this was Christmas 2006. February 2007 rolls around, and I am full flight from reality. Cannot differentiate the true from the false. I am off the reservation. And so I'm sitting at my house, and my girlfriend at the time was over, and it had to be sometime in the afternoon because her husband was still at work. And I was telling her about all my large designs and plans that I had for life and what I was going to do. Because I'm such a, I called my mother, and I'd worked for her, and I was like, Mom, I ain't coming to work no more. And the only person that was news to was me, because I ain't been showing up to work no way. I'd have been fired. And if it wasn't for my mother, it's hard to meet a good alcoholic male that don't end up on Mama's couch or in the basement. And my mama, she loved me to death. I love her to death, but she just didn't know what to do with me. And my mama got a smaller house because I worked with her. She's like, we got the small house now, but she'd make my mortgage payment because she knew she didn't want me living with her. So I'm over at my house. I'm telling my girlfriend, I was like, I don't ever sleep. You know what? I could run a gambling and liquor joint right out of my house. We could have some cards tables, throw some craps. I could sell liquor by the drink. I can make money by stealing stuff and selling it. And I was like, I never sleep. Ain't nobody going to slip nothing by me. I'll keep an eye on everything. And I had this lawnmower out in the garage, and it run in 5 years, and had about 1.5 acres, and had this garden area I'd never used. And I knew with just a little bit of grading out there in the garden, a few turns of a wrench on that lawnmower, we could have some souped-up lawnmower racing on the weekend. We could bet on it. I was going to have a hot dog stand, sell concessions, everything. We'd have had a large time. Well, none of my plans came to fruition. Back then, I was long on talk and short on action. And as a matter of fact, the next day, they come and got me. So my dad, my sister, and a friend of the family, and they took me for a little ride. And I packed the bag. I thought I was going away. Y'all ever have, when you was back drinking like that, your friends would disappear for a month or so, and you wouldn't hear nothing from them? And but they took me out to the Rockingham County Mental Health for an assessment. And they said, we assessed you done brought him to the right place. And they signed me up for some IOP, and I did not want to be there. And nobody else really seemed to want to be there. But I was forced to go. I was forced to go see the psychiatrist. Lie to him, old Dr. Grogan. He's right across the street from the Presbyterian Church parking lot where I grew up going to when they got the speaker meeting on Monday night. And I'd go in there on Tuesday morning, and he'd go, you been up all night? I'm like, no. And he'd give me the old ducky down eye look. When somebody thinks you're lying, they could be like, Did you do that? I said, don't you be ducky down eye looking at me like I'm sitting here lying to your face like I am lying to you. But don't, how dare you ducky down eye look me over that. Bunch of BS if I ever heard it. So anyway, and I laugh and joke, but that was February 2007, and it was September of 2009 before I found my way in here. And these were dark, dark, lonely, lonely times. When I got to you people, and y'all read the line from the book that says pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization, I knew exactly what that meant. And incomprehensible means you can't understand. And I knew exactly what it meant when you said it. And I spent a lot of time at home drinking alone. I didn't have the money to do that. I'd get a half gallon of Evan Williams and drink it because there was no peace. There was no peace. There's a 12-step prayer book I read from, and it says, the search for serenity is yours and mine to find together, but we each find our way on our own. But while I'm drinking, I will settle for oblivion. And that was the only peace I knew, was the darkness. The only escape I could get from the disgust. I would sit there, and I knew I had these two wonderful, kind-hearted, loving parents who had made every sacrifice, gave me every opportunity. How would I have repaid these good, loving people? By being the absolute worst son I could possibly be to them, from lying to them, from stealing from them, not showing up when I say I'm going to show up. Just hurt. I say, the biggest lie I told myself was I'm not married, I don't have any kids. It's like I'm not hurting anybody but me. How many thousands of times did my mother cry herself to sleep during those years? And so I'd sit there and I'd scroll through my phone and I'd be like, how long has it been since anybody called, Who cares? And I had just accepted the fact this is how my life was going to end one day, in that living room, by myself drunk, and it'd be a couple of days before anybody came to look. I knew there were times I would get so physically sick that I was like, Mike, there's a good chance you're going to die if you don't get help, if you don't go to the hospital. And I knew this. I knew the things that I was doing was killing me, but I couldn't ask for help. I knew if I went and saw a doctor, he would say, son, what you're doing is killing you. If you don't stop, you're going to die. I knew it, but I couldn't imagine stopping. And I knew it was just a matter of time and before I'd be found there dead. And I didn't care if I lived or died, and I didn't think anybody else did either. And there was a knock on my door, Labor Day morning, 2009, and I knew who it was. There was only one person that came over to my house, my father, my poor father. I can't tell you how extremely proud he was of me by this point. I'm 34 years old, and I'm being very facetious. And every time he had a day off, he'd have to ride 5 miles across town to wake me up to go to work so my mother didn't have to spend half the day calling looking for me because I worked for her. And I opened the door, and he had 2 bags, and one was a brown paper bag, which I knew would contain a tenderloin biscuit from PG's Chicken and Biscuit. And he had a bag from Rite Aid, which I knew would contain a drug test. I said, well, I will take that biscuit, and I will fail that drug test. And so we sat down and had a little talk. He said, something's got to change, and I knew he was serious this time. He said, we need to talk to your mother. And I said, all right. So I got cleaned up, and I went over to their house. And it was a beautiful, summer day. And I got there. She said, I want to talk to you outside. And I was like, oh, my God. I was like, she's never wanted to talk to me outside before. Like, what is this? What is happening? So she's walking with her back to me, and when she turned and looked at me, the look on her face burned in my mind, the disgust, the absolute disgust on her face when she looked at me, and I knew I had put it there. She was so ashamed, so frustrated, she had absolutely no idea what to do with me. And by this time, my sister and brother-in-law had moved back from Mississippi, and my little nephew, Stephen, was about to turn 1 year old. He was the only grandbaby, and he was a great distraction because they were so caught up in that, I thought they weren't paying attention to what I was doing. And my mother said to me that morning, she says, Michael, your father and I love you very much. We've tried to get you help. We've taken you to see these psychiatrists. Did they say anything that would help? Is there anything we could have done different? Is there something we did wrong? Tell us what we have to do so Stephen doesn't end up like you. And when she said those words to me, my heart broke. My heart broke. If all it took to get sober was breaking Mama's heart, I'd been sober 1,000 times over. But at that point, I was mentally, physically, and spiritually bankrupt. I had absolutely nothing, less than zero, no idea which way to turn, up or down, left or right, no design for living, no plan. The man who once thought he was so smart, always 3 steps ahead, I can think my way out of any situation. I had absolutely nothing. Nothing. And miraculously, something strange happened just 3 to 5 minutes after she said those words to me and my phone rang. And there's a guy I hadn't heard from in almost a year, and surprise, surprise, he was almost 1 year clean in the other fellowship. He said, how you doing? I said, man, I'm not doing too good. said, are you still going to meetings? He said, I am. I said, can I go with you? He said, we'll come get you. And he and his sponsor came and picked me up that night, the next night, and the next night. And then I called a lady I called a girl I went to high school with, and I knew had gone to treatment earlier that summer. Now, get a load of this. Who's the crazy person? She calls me at 9:08 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Oh, Michael, it's so good to hear from you. I just left the early bird meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous meets every day in Greensboro. And I'm like, hold up. Like, who's been up all night on the pixie dust here? Like, I was like, I had me a few beers last night because, beer wasn't a problem. And you talking about this crazy stuff. You talking about getting from Breedsville to Greensboro by 8 a.m. I was like, you got to get up early. Like, you just ain't going to roll out of bed and be 30 miles away. That's crazy. So I put on the nicest clothes I could muster up. I felt like I was going to a business meeting or something, and I wish I had a cloak of invisibility so I could have slipped in there and nobody would have seen me. And if anybody's walked into their first meeting on their own, my hat is off to you. If those people hadn't had the kindness and decency to carry me to those first meetings, I'd have never walked through the door. The first time I tried to go a meeting by myself, I pulled up in the church parking lot, sat there for 3 or 4 minutes, and I drove off because I simply didn't have the courage to walk in. And that day when I walked in, I was to the Summit Club. I was scared to death. And I was scared to death because you would find out who I really am. And I was like every fiber of my body wanted to scream out for help, but my pride wouldn't let me utter a word. That false pride. So I was like, what will they think of me if I can't figure this out on my own? But I'm a quick learner. So as about halfway through the meeting, I was like, I think I've caught on. I've cleaned up. I just need to share a few pretty words. So I did. And nothing I said was really worth repeating. Dropped some MFers and, a couple of 4-letter words and stuff, and they cut me off. But I was paying attention. They said, if you need to share twice, wait till burning desire. So I did. And then after the meeting, everybody just kind of, uh-oh, Michael, you done did it now. They're going to get run off from AA. They don't even want you here. And old Bob F., he came up, and he was on the road behind me, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, son, we love you. And we want you to keep coming back. But you need to shut up and listen. And now Bob was right. And I happened to do a Zoom meeting back in April, and I got to see Bob pick up his 28-year medallion. I normally don't. I don't think I've been back to that meeting, and I just happened in, and I got to say, tell that story. And there's just, like I said, there's so many people. There's countless people to thank for where I'm at today. And so I kept coming back, and then I was studying what y'all were doing. I was like, so I was coming in here, and I don't know about any of you. But when I first got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I did not want to be in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And even though they'd given me that little slip of paper when I was 21 that said I was an alcoholic, by this time, in my mind, I had cured myself of my alcoholism with my current drug addiction. So I no longer suffered from alcoholism anymore. I really just wanted to get some people off my back. And luckily for y'all, I had been to a couple months of that IOP out at the Rockingham County Mental Health. So while I'm stuck here coming, at least maybe I'll try to help a little. And so one day, one of y'all said, if you don't think you're alcoholic, try some controlled drinking. I said, aha! There it is. There's the solution. So I'm a big boy, so I'd have 7. I'd go out and I'd have 7 drinks, and I'd go home and I'd read from my daily reflection or the 24 hours, and I would go ahead and load up both barrels. I was like, it didn't matter what the topic was going to be the next morning. I was preloaded up a share, and I knew when I came in with my little buzzed up share that just the clouds would part and the sunlight of the Spirit would shine in through the windows, and the men and women everyone would just float off on a pink cloud of tranquility that I would paint with my beautiful words of recovery and sobriety and caring and tender love and joy. And they were hanging on every word I said. I'd talk and they'd get funny looks. They'd head tilting. I was, they're really paying attention. And I sat by the door, so when they'd leave, they'd come by, and the good little men and women of that room, they would come by and they would pat me on the shoulder and they would say, son, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. The men and the women, they'd come by. I'm praying for you. And I thought to myself, wasn't that nice? And isn't that nice? These sweet men and women, they care. They're praying for me. And I did not have 1 ounce of humility, not one. I couldn't ask anybody anything. I figured this out all on my own without anybody's help. That when y'all were talking about praying for me, what y'all was really saying, y'all thought I was crazy. So I was like, don't you pray for me. I'm going to pray for you. If anybody's going to pray for anybody, I'm going to wake up early, pray for you twice, before you even think about waking up. Don't you pray for me. I'm praying for you. You sneaky, sneaky people tricked me into praying. The spite's a powerful tool. I'm telling you what. I stopped drinking because I was like, you know what? I'm an old timer. I'm going to be at your funeral sober. What do you think about that? Thinking I can't stay sober. I'll get you. Alcoholic mind's a crazy thing. It's crazy thing. So anyway, if I'd known it was going to be my last night drinking, I'd have done a better job. But it's October 28th, 2009, and I went out from a 7-drink limit. Kind of lost count a little bit. We was drinking pitchers. I ran into a girl that I'd known since high school. She kind of let me know she had something that she knew I liked, and we went back to my house, and I come to the next morning, and I had disrobed during the course of the evening, and I had woke up, and I discovered myself that I had baptized myself in my own urine at some point in the night, and I come to, and I look down, I look at me, and I look at her, and she's about as big and hairy as I am. All things being equal, I assure you, she was as equally disappointed in me as I was with her. So let's just get the record straight. There's no sexism, chauvinism. Everybody was equally disappointed. So I look at me, I look at her, I look back at me, and I say, look at you now, genius. Look at you now. This is it. This is as good as it's ever going to get. This is the best you can hope for. And I didn't want this. I didn't want this anymore. And I'd been coming for a couple months, and I said, Michael, if you can't attempt to work this program of Alcoholics Anonymous like it seems to be working for so many of these other people, you're just giving yourself an excuse to fail the rest of your life like you have up until now. And I knew I didn't like being told what to do. I said, Michael, you need to choose to want to do these things. Because it seems like this I convinced myself that that all of y'all weren't in cahoots trying to pull off the world's largest practical joke on me. Because I'd been to a dozen meetings and met a couple thousand people, and I'm like, well, they're not all getting together. Like, we'll meet at the church at 7 o'clock, and we'll all bring our big books. We'll trick that McCollum kid into thinking there's something to this AA. I was like, these people seem to have found some peace and some joy in their life, and it would be the best chance for me having it in mind. And now, when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a devout atheist. I could tell you 8 ways from Sunday how God couldn't, wouldn't, didn't exist because I couldn't explain it, define it, or put it in a box. I thought I suffered from great intelligence. What I found out later, I suffered from great arrogance. But that morning before I got out of bed, I looked out my window and I said to myself, I was like, Michael, it seems like this getting sober business is hard enough on its own. Why don't you just act like there's a God? And I'd heard y'all say some simple things like, God does not make too hard of terms on those who seek him. And before I believed God would work in my life, I believed God was working in yours. And then you said, well, Michael, why don't you try it our way for 90 days? If you don't like it, your misery is 100% refundable. So that morning, on October 29, 2009, I got out of my bed, got on my knees, and I asked a God I did not believe in to help me with a problem I couldn't solve on my own, and I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since. And that's my experience. Thank you. Thank you. So now you had me squarely at step 1. Because I thought I had a problem with the God thing, and this wasn't going to work for me, but the real problem was me. I could not make that admission of powerless. So there I am. It says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and our lives had become unmanageable. And the spiritual principle behind that first step is honesty. But the problem for me is self can't spot self-deception. So I lie to myself in my own voice, and the left side of my brain is selling crap, and the right side of the brain's buying it just as fast as the other can sell it. And thank you. Thank you for being in these rooms, and thank you for the people, the founders, that they worded it as such. We admitted we. If it said I admitted I would have walked right out that door because I wasn't powerless over anything. Because they had poked and prodded me and took me to specialists, and they'd looked down at me, and people that read out a book had told me what my problem was and what I needed to do. And when I came in here, I sat around with people who were just like me. The honesty that you would share, I was appalled. I couldn't believe the things that you would say openly and share in front of them, but I knew exactly what you meant. You had felt the way I felt. You had done the same things I'd done. You'd been the same places I'd been, and you reacted the same way I did. And you didn't suffer anymore. But thank God it said we admitted we. I've heard it said if you take the letter I and replace it with the word we, it even turns the word illness into wellness. So I move on to step 2. It says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And so that's just came to believe, and the spiritual principle behind that is hope. And the hope was all around me. I was like, well, where is all this help? And I was blind to it. I look around, and there's 60, 70 people at my home group every morning staying sober one day together with each other's help who couldn't stay sober a day on their own. And Jimmy Brown, he pointed it out to me one day after the meeting. He said, boy, I didn't like that. He called me boy. He said, what you have is a complete lack of humility. He says, how arrogant is it of you to say it'll work for all these other people but won't work for you? He said, look, we got 60, 70 people in here every morning, people who are selfish and self-centered by nature coming together to help each other with a problem they can't solve on their own. How arrogant is it of you to say you are a bigger problem than God himself can solve? It will work for everybody else, but it won't work for you. And I love talking about step 2 and that coming to believe. And we have the chapter, we agnostic, and in the 12 and 12, the step 2, and it describes so many ways I thought, so many ways I felt, and it says we look down at religion and prayer on the way of weakness. And then it talks about the man who was the president of the Atheist Society, and they said the hoop Alcoholics Anonymous wanted him to jump through. He had room to spare, and now he freely talks of God. And there was a man that only believed in science and only believed in himself, the man that had religion and lost it, the man that looked down on religion as the way of the weak, the man that was too smart, the man that said God wasn't doing his job right. And at some point in my life, I had thought and felt all those same exact thoughts, and I had an epiphany. I said, well, Michael, how are your thoughts so unique and original if they're written in books published 20 and 40 years before you were even born? Enough people had thought this to write it down. They got it in books. And so I came to believe. And they brought me squarely to step 3, which made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of a loving God as we understood him. Quoting, and I like quoting stuff from memory, but it's really just showing off. But faith is a spiritual principle behind that. And faith is a belief in things yet unseen. And what do I see in here? I see people come together and recover and give me a new way of life, a new hope for living that didn't exist before. And step 3 has been described to me the most loving and kind way that I like to pass on. It's simply making a decision to try it somebody else's way. Because if I've honestly done step 1, I can see my way isn't working. And then what's the decision? It's to move on with the steps. And so now I get to the scariest one. Step 4, what's the spiritual principle behind it is courage. You made a searching and fearless moral inventory. And I was like, no how, no way, I can't do that. I can't take a look at myself. Because I don't want to know what I'll find. The biggest secret of my life is who I really am, and it was such a secret I had no idea who I was. I was living with a stranger because I had tried to be something I wasn't my entire life. And they said, Michael, you have to, you would use the word humility, and I had no idea what that meant. It says, well, you have to know who you are and where you came from. That's why I have no idea. I have no idea who I am. So I had to take a look at myself on paper. And then I was sober for several years before I heard old-timers saying there's a second half to that definition of humility. It's having a design, an idea for the person you want to become. And that's what this program of Alcoholics Anonymous gives me. It gives me a design for living where I can be okay with me. And then I get to step 5. And it's admitted to ourselves, God, ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And the spiritual principle behind that is integrity, which is a search for more truth. And as much self-examination I would do, I could look at myself for 1,000 years, and I would have never found as much as I found with working with another man. Because as I said before, I can only look at myself from the first point of view. And there are things about myself that I don't want to see, that I refuse to see, and I need to have them pointed out because I don't know what the exact nature of my wrong is. When I saw that step on the wall, I was like, I've never been wrong a day in my life. What do you mean exactly? I was like, everybody else is wrong, and that's the problem is I'm trying to convince myself I'm right and everybody else is wrong. So sponsorship is an invaluable tool. I get to step 6, become willing to have God remove all these defects of character. And the spiritual person is willingness. And my sponsor gave me a job to do. He said, you need to write down your character defects. So I did. I wrote down like 6 or 7 things. I took it to him. He laughed. That hurt my feelings. And he handed me a sheet of paper with about 25 lists of character defects on it. And I was like, did somebody else, is this my list or is this like for everybody? But it had words like, judgmental, arrogance, gossip, procrastination, pride, all these. And then they all hit me right square between the eyes. And I had to take a look at them. I had to take a look at these things. And I passed. And you know what all these defects have in common? They're all human characteristics. And I've been beating myself up my whole life for being an emotional, feeling person because I react to these natural human emotions, but I don't know how to express them. And so I didn't know, so I'm just beating myself up for being human. But being alcoholic, I take these human characteristics and I take them to extremes. And this I get to 7. This is, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. So we are at humility. And this is, I need a lot of work on this. I need your help. But I like the little red book, and it goes through the 12 steps, and it says a direct side effect of doing this step properly is that you'll have moments of dissatisfaction and be upset with yourself when old alcoholic thinking crops up. But that's a sign of growth. Because before, I'd steal your wallet and help you look for it. And then now, I've got a little bit of a conscience, and I have to be aware of these defects so I can ask God to help me with them. And now when they come up, I don't act out on them as long. I can look to where I can correct my behavior. And then we get to step 8. Made a list of all persons we'd harmed who came willing to make amends to them. And the spiritual principle behind that, I've been telling them since one of the others, forgiveness. Because I already had the list. I went back, and by this time, I had pages of documentation in my own handwriting of all the horrible things I had done to other people. These defects I had acted out on, and it was all in my handwriting. I couldn't deny it. And you know what I learned from that? I said, well, Michael, you're not perfect. And why would you expect anybody else to be perfect either? And I desperately wanted to be cut some slack. I desperately wanted to be forgiven. I said, well, Michael, why don't you cut everybody else some slack too and allow other people to make mistakes just as you have? And my sponsor told me, he said, Michael, if you go through, the most important thing about going through that 4-step lift, it's not the people that you need to make amends to at this point. It's the people you're harboring resentment towards. Because if you read any of those names and it changes the way you feel and you're still harboring hatred or resentment towards any of those individuals, you're going to be gravely ineffective at moving forward in step 9, seeking amends for the actions you've done if you're still harboring that hatred yourself. So I moved on to step 9, and you made amends to such persons except where injure them or others. And that's brotherly love. And I'll tell you short, I had an amends that did not go well. I was about 10 months sober, and I went to see one of my friends I'd known him my whole life. We'd known each other since we were 6 years old. And I went over to his house and knocked on the door, and he said, what are you doing here? And he called me a few choice names, and I said, man, I'm sober. And he said, I know. He said, I don't care. That doesn't make any difference. And he went through a long list of things I'd done. I'd brought people over to his house he didn't want over there. I didn't show up. I'd caused trouble for him and his now wife. And, and he laid it on me. And it really hurt my feelings. But I let him say what he had to say. I was like, I'll just go. And I left. And if I had tried to do that when I was 30, 60, 90 days sober, I would have had to drink. I would have had to drink because I wouldn't have had the coping skills to do it. But on my ride home, I had an epiphany. I was like, Michael, you did the right thing today. You cleared your side of the street. And the epiphany that I had, I said, Michael, if you're living your life in such a way that the things you do on a daily basis end up on a 4-step, you have no choice but to drink, to live with yourself, and the guilt and the shame that comes associated with that. The only other choice is to swallow a bullet. And sometimes that would seem like a good idea. So, in the 9th step promise, it says, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Our birthdays are 2 days apart. I called him every year on his birthday for 5 years. He never returned a phone call. Called him every year for Christmas for 5 years. He never returned a phone call. And I was like, well, sometimes the only amends you can make is to leave him alone. Well, almost 2 years ago, I was just shy of being 10 years sober, and I was at the Lawndale meeting, and Wayne Stutz, who passed away this summer, was speaking for his last time, and he was in a wheelchair, and the meeting was packed. There was 150-plus people there. And at the end of the meeting, we circle up in the room, and we pray, and I recognize a figure standing on the other side of the room. And I catch her eyes with it, and I start walking. It's my buddy's wife, Charlotte. They were now married. I saw the pictures on Facebook. I was not invited. And I approached her, and I opened my arms. And she just buried her head in my chest, and I hugged her. And I felt her little body quiver. And I could tell she was sobbing. And I said, Charlotte, we're so happy to have you. I said, welcome. I said, how long have you been with us? She said, today's day 13. I said, welcome to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Meet my friend Angela. Meet Emily. Meet Natalie. Get these women's number that will help you. She'll have 2 years next week. So sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Then we get to the 10th step, continue to take a personal inventory, and we're wrong, promptly admit it. Now, who wants to do that? Promptly? That's a little extravagant. Promptly, I'm wrong. And it really, to me, that's just doing steps 4 through 9 on a daily basis, taking a look at the things I do, and it's perseverance. It's a spiritual, because I have to keep that up, and I have to keep an eye on myself. I have to look at myself, at the things I do. And then step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our contact with the higher power and pray for only knowledge of His will for us and the strength to carry that out. And spirituality is the spiritual principle behind that. So I need to be connected to this higher power on a daily basis. It says we have a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And I have to do that through prayer. But I don't know are any of y'all like this? I like worrying. I think worrying is the answer to 90% of my problems. I go to bed just about every night with a tiny little problem, and 3 or 4 in the morning, I'm wide awake. I'm like, I need a team of Army engineers to focus on this problem. I was like, or maybe tomorrow I'm going to take the day off, lay on the couch for 8 interrupted hours and feel good and sorry for me till everything's better, because the old man will try the same game again. And I was at a conference a couple years ago, and I heard a guy say, and it really struck a chord to me. He said, Michael, well, he didn't say it to me, he said it to everybody. He said, worry is just meditating on fear. And then Chuck Chamberlain says, there's only one problem that underlies all problems, and that's conscious separation from God. And it manifests itself in any number of ways. Problems with work, problems with my spouse, problems with parents, or somebody at work not doing what I want them to do. But it's conscious separation from God. So there's one answer. There's one answer, and that's conscious contact with God. And so I don't know how many times I've beat myself up. I spend 5 or 6 uninterrupted hours worrying about my problems. I finally pick up the phone and call somebody. You know what they say? Have you prayed about it? I was like, you're a genius. You are a genius. I have not thought about praying. And I've been sober almost 12 years. And it says when selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, immediately go to God and once in prayer, talk to somebody and look for somebody to help. But I do that maybe 7% of the time because I like beating myself up and feeling sorry for me. So come to step 12, which I love too. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of working these steps, we try to carry this message to other alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. And the spiritual principle in that is charity. And I emphasize the word the, because I think for a couple years I read it wrong. I thought it said A. I was looking for a result. But having had a spiritual awakening as the result, that's the only thing that's promised from here. And then to carry the message, what's the message? It's how to have that spiritual awakening and that psychological change. And it's my experience that the countless people that I've seen come into this room, and to me, the change occurred in me. And without my permission. But it's impossible to come in here, work these steps to the best of your ability, as honestly you can, under the guidance of a sponsor, and not have that psychological change and that spiritual awakening, and then all these other gifts manifest from that. And I love listening to Sandy Beach talks, and he describes it as this, and he gives credit to somebody else for saying it, that the greatest gift the world has ever received are these awakened people. People like us gathered here. People would walk across the road to get away from me. Nobody was calling anybody, and now to be a good, upstanding member of society and contribute and be able to help others. And I'd like to share a story about the change that occurred in me. It was October 30th, 2010. I'd picked up my one-year chip the day before. And I'd gone to the early bird, and then I got home, or I went by my parents' house, and my 98-year-old grandfather had been in the hospital all week, and he wasn't looking too good. And shortly after I arrived, my dad got a phone call, and I heard the other person on the phone say, we're making him comfortable. And immediately I knew what that meant. And my first thought without any hesitation is I need to go get Grandma and take her up there to see him, because she hadn't seen him since Thursday when I was last up there with her. And that's not the way Michael normally thinks. Michael will think, well, this is an inconvenience. This is going to be troublesome. How long is this going to take? And I jumped in the car, and I went to the nursing home, picked my grandmother up, and took her to the hospital. And we went up to the second floor, and we found my grandfather, and his breathing was labored, and the nurse came in and told us he was on the morphine, and we knew that the end was close. And I got to hold my grandfather's hand. I got to kiss him on the head. I got to tell him I love him. I got to hold my grandmother while she cried. And he passed away about 20 minutes after we got there. But he didn't have to die alone. We were there for him. And what a gift. What a gift. That's a gift that you gave me, because I could have not done that alone. And it's my experience, you don't get a second chance in life to be there for the ones you love when they need you the most like that. And how many times did I miss things because I couldn't be bothered because I was drunk on the couch? Now, since I was sober at the time, the next morning I was the first person up. I went to my parents' house, and right after I got there, my dad got a phone call and needed to go to the funeral home, and I said, I'll ride there with you. I was scared to death. I had made a verbal amends to my father, and I'd offered to pay back. That court date that I mentioned I had on September 18th, it was I'd had a vehicle confiscated by the police. And I had stolen the money from my father for that vehicle, and I'd offered to pay him the money back, but he had forgave it. But my dad's a real quiet man, and I really didn't know where we stood at that time. And when we got in that car together, I was scared to death. I was like, nowhere in the big book does it say this is what you say to your father when his dad dies. And so we're riding down the road, and I'm just thinking, what do you say, what do you say? And I thought the only thing I knew to say, and I said, Dad, I'm grateful I'm sober today, and I can be here for you and Grandma and Mom. My dad looked at me and said, Michael, I love you. And your mother and I are very proud of you. He said, please just keep doing the things you're doing. I don't understand how it works, but I know the things you do help other people. Just please keep doing it. And my father had season tickets to the Redskins for 30 years, but we hadn't gone to a game together in 5 years because the last time we went, I got drunk and embarrassed him. And he said, I've got tickets to the Giants game on New Year's. I'd very much like it if you and I could go together. So that New Year's, we got in the car. It's a 5-hour drive from Ridgeville to D.C. We didn't turn the radio on once. We just talked. Alcoholics Anonymous gave me back a relationship with my parents. You taught me how to be a son. You taught me how to be a brother. You taught me how to be a friend. These are all things I didn't know how to do before. I tried to pay him that money back, but he wouldn't accept it. But last year, 2 weeks before Christmas, I showed up at his house with a gently used, fully loaded Chevy Avalanche, sunroof, leather seats, 4-wheel drive, new brakes, new tires, the title, and 2 sets of keys. And so I opened the garage door. There's a bow on the front of the truck, and he looks at me, and he looks at it, and he said, what's this? And I got the title on the I said, this is your truck. He said, I don't know what to say. I said, you don't have to say anything, Dad. I love you. And he said, I love you, and he hugged me. What a gift. What a gift. Like I said, if I had 1,000,000 years, I couldn't repay this program. But it's time for me to wrap up. I can see y'all are getting antsy. But the first time I spoke, it was July 8th, 2010. I'd just been arrested a couple weeks before for that thing I was waiting for that court date from. I was a little nervous. And I woke up that morning, I was full of doubt and full of fear. And I was like, am I going to have anything to say? Am I going to be able to help anybody with what? Is anybody going to care? Anybody going to listen? I said, Mike, you just need to do what you do every day. So I sat down and I prayed. And I read from my daily devotionals. And I read the daily reflection. It said this, and I knew everything would be all right. It says, when I finally asked God to remove those things blocking me from Him in the sunlight of the Spirit, I embarked on a journey more glorious than I ever imagined. I experienced the freedom from those characteristics that had me wrapped up in myself. Because of this humbling step, I feel clean. I am especially aware of this step because I'm now able to be useful to God and my fellows. I know that He has granted me strength to do His bidding, and He has prepared me for anyone and anything that comes my way today. I am truly in His hands, and I give thanks for the joy that I can be useful today. Thank you all very much. I love you all. Have a fantastic weekend.
Man, wasn't that awesome? He's great, man. I enjoyed that thoroughly. And the committee thought they might enjoy it so much they got a lovely gift for you that I will be presenting now. Oh, it's a fifth.
I think it's South Carolina.
Hey.
Oh, fantastic.
I really enjoyed that, and I hope that y'all will help us close with the Lord's Prayer.